So we've got elephant in the room, or Wolverine in the room, is the fact that the wide receivers, unlike the tight ends, because they're used for the blocking and the run game, they're used for receiving, they're used all over the place. What has been a bit more of a struggle, though, as we know, and I was about to do a whole show that was going to be a Ron Bellamy rant show, but I decided not to, because he started proving it in the recruiting field. But we have seen with the wide receivers inconsistency, with a few exceptions. Cornelius Johnson from here and there in 2022. And yes, last year, Roman Wilson becoming the obvious X and deep shot answer to have a couple of clutch moments in a game where Michigan was losing against Alabama, and had a couple of clutch one-handed grabs and grabs in general that saved Michigan from maybe losing that game. Roman Wilson became that deep answer. Do you think that there could be the next Roman Wilson with these folks here?
Well, I'm not going to steal your thunder, because I think something you're going to say. But what I will say is that I am rooting for Samaj Morgan. I do believe that he is he has the talent, he has the swag, so to speak, as well. I think he's going to. I do think he made a few errors here and there last year. There were some times where we were the stress level kind of went up a little bit, but I think he has learned from that, and he is on the cusp of becoming a star, maybe one of our superstars. So we'll see what happens. But Samaj Morgan is the guy I'm rooting for. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that in an offense...
too, so go ahead.
Well, I think in an offense where wide receivers are more heavily spotlit, like an air raid or a USC-style offense, an Ohio State-style offense, I think you'd see all three of these guys that we're about to talk about have even more lights-out plays. The reality of our situation is that we're blessed with an incredible O-line every year, incredible running back core every year, and you don't need to fall back on the wide receivers quite as much, right? There were a few moments that in the playoffs, specifically, and against Ohio State, where JJ did have to connect with Roman Wilson with the receivers. Tyler Morris had a great run against Alabama, outran some of that SEC speed to score a touchdown against Alabama. And I do think that Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris are pretty set. I don't really see a lot of controversy there. I think Samaj Morgan will be great in the slot. Tyler Morris, he deserves his moment to be a deep answer. But I'm going to take my victory lap now, because Fred Moore is looking like he is going to be the ex-starter. He has been lighting it up in camp, and he is, by all accounts, taken the starting role. As of now, it's still early, and people can overtake it. But I'm holding firm that Fred Moore is going to be in the X position against Fresno State, snap one, game one. And I do think that he could eat any of these three could ball out. Any of them. They could have their moment. I do think that Tyler Morris, given the fact that he just seems to be so on the cusp of greatness, like he's had these moments where I've seen greatness, and if Ron Bellamy and Kirk Campbell can put it together for Tyler Morris, he could really break out. Now, Fred Moore, I think I've been a Fred Moore defender since people thought it was going to be Amarian Walker at the X or Peyton O'Leary or some other person at the X. But it does look like Fred Moore is going to be the X starter. And so those are your three starters most likely. But what I do want to dive in on with you, Ferris, is the depth, because Amarian Walker's back. He decided to come back, flip from defensive back to wide receiver. Peyton O'Leary has shown moments in spring games that he can light it up. He's had a couple of really good moments in spring games, but he just seems to be in that depth, right? And then Amarian Stewart and CJ Charleston, I don't see either of them breaking through this year other than maybe some special team stuff, some reverses, some other things, gadgets where in practice they might realize, CJ Charleston's really great in this package. Because Michigan does that all the time. Like if they see a player that's really good for a particular package or particular concept, then they get tapped in, even if they're fourth or fifth string. Mm-hmm. So what do you see anybody here on this list that might have an impact, even in special teams, if not in the offense?
Yeah, I know you just talked about Frederick Moore, but Amarian Walker is a junior. Moore is a sophomore, correct? So
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So I say they battle it out. Peyton O'Leary is also a junior. It seems like it's depth, but it also seems like best man for the job, game by game might end up happening to a certain extent. So maybe this is a little unexpected, but we have some level of depth at the wide receiver position. Mm-hmm. And there's some level of interchangeability, if you want to call it that, parts that are moving in and out potentially. If we want to become more sophisticated, we'll have to see if we actually do that or not. Do we stay consistent, or do we start doing stuff that's a little bit more exotic, or getting players on and off the field, that sort of thing? And I don't know what's going to happen. First, if it's going to be Alex Orji, then I think, the gut feel is that we're going to have to kind of simplify and really focus on the run, and Alex Orji gets some of those runs as well. So it really kind of depends who the quarterback is going to be to know what's going to happen, really with the wide receiver position. But even if it is Orji, he has got to get the ball. There's got to be at least a threat. You can't have, I guess, pun intended again, you can't have the defense cheat on us, and just say, you know what, they're not going to the wide receiver. I'm just going to assume that they're going to run on this play. We've got to keep the defense honest.
And Ralph bringing up a good point that Amarian Walker is our tallest wide receiver, let's be real. There are concepts that Michigan does run with 4 wide receivers. It's not as common as other schools because we do use tight ends pretty heavily. But, you're going to see Amarian Walker. He didn't come back to play 0 snaps in starting role. Like, he is going to have concepts and, areas where they're going to rotate people out to allow Amarian Walker a chance to shine. That's going to happen. He wouldn't have come back if he was imagine how well that would have gone in a transfer portal. Hey, you're going to ride the bench all year, but you'll get a great degree. I don't think that would have gone over too well. I don't know. So I agree with you, Ralph, who's one of our YouTube members, that Amarian Walker is going to be utilized in some key concepts for sure. Okay. With that said, we've got plenty of comments from YouTube members here. Orji will play a lot no matter what. I'm not going to mention any comments on physical appearance. We try not to do that here. But thank you for being here anyway. And yeah, so let's go ahead and hit your X factor, your sleeper, and your bold prediction for the wide receiver unit.
All right, I already gave the bold prediction, which I don't know how bold that is, but the idea that the wide receivers are going to get more yards than the tight ends for Michigan. So the X factor to me, as I kind of mentioned before, is Samaj Morgan. So I think he's the man. He's the one I'm rooting for. Sleeper, I'm going to go with Amarian Walker because he doesn't have a starting role right now, but maybe he starts doing stuff that we're not expecting. I do like that the idea that he's 6'2". That is a interesting side note as well. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they said 6'3" in chat, so that is something that helps. For me, The X Factor, Fred Moore. The Sleeper, Fred Moore. And bold prediction, I'm going to say that there will be more 4 wide receiver concepts this year where Amarian Walker is utilized alongside the others. And it might be a vertical concept with verts. It might be an all go. It might be a some type of like it could be a lot of different things. But I do think that you're going to see some more 4 wide receiver stuff and Amarian Walker being utilized as well. So there you go.